Next, from Springfield, we talked to Rob Carr, the president and CEO of the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, and get his thoughts now that Cook County commissioners voted to repeal the sweetened beverages tax, a tax that Carr and his organization opposed. This runs about 10 minutes.
Rob Carr, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And the last time we spoke, you were telling us about the problems associated with what was called the sweetened beverage tax up in Cook County. And as we stand here doing this interview, just yesterday, Cook County commissioners voted to repeal that tax. So, number one, congratulations to you and your efforts. What, in your estimation, made this happen? Because a government taking a tax off is certainly in Illinois almost unheard of.
Yeah. You know, you're right. It's really unheard of, and we can't find a single example where something like this has been repealed, at least at the Cook County level. So it's a frankly historic development. What made it happen? We could probably fill a lot of tape with what made it happen. I think it was a great combined effort by a number of entities, including ours, but and retailers sharing their story, being willing to come forward. I really think it comes down, though, to consumers. Consumers in Cook County are outraged, and I think this is the match that kind of lit the fire to the kindling that was already there. They've been bombarded over the past 5 years with taxes, not all at the county level, but the city, county, and the state. And much as we talk about down here, right, businesses and consumers are the same. They pay it out of one pocket. They're not like government, so they feel that cumulative effect. And they had just had it with this, and they were enraged, and they stayed enraged throughout. And I think that's really what made the difference.
Part of what I was thinking of as I was watching these events develop and with the anger and the angst is, as you had made the point, it was a overly complicated tax to try to apply, so it was driving businesses crazy. But from the consumer end, I think a lot of what you and I would talk about relative to the capital, you get involved in pensions or this tax or that tax that people can't get their head around. But they can understand having an extra tax on their soda, and it's kind of the thing they could latch onto, perhaps, that made them so angry. How was that anger of the populace, how did, let's say, the boiling of that pot affect the mood within the Cook County commissioners, and what role did it have in the vote that eventually repealed this tax?
I think it was really important. I mean, you know, one of the groups that we were involved with, the Manufacturers Association, ran polls several times that reflected the anger. And, you know, anytime you get 85 to 86% of consumers in an area expressing outrage, that takes notice. We had Democratic legislators who were passing petitions telling us, listen, consumers don't want to sign President Preckwinkle's petition, and all they want to talk about is the sweetened beverage tax. And they see that, and they also see the fact that, you know, in many cases, they're paying a 50, 60, or even 70% effective tax rate on a product. That's just outrageous. And they see it on their receipt. They experience it in their pocketbook. And it's not just soda. It's across all beverages, right? Diet, sweetened, with sugar, without sugar, you name it. And it was just simply too much.
I think on one hand, people often feel that you can't fight City Hall, as the old saying goes, and that maybe their voices aren't heard and the government just does what it wants to do, which sadly is probably often true. But this is an example, I think, of democracy working, of the voices of the people being heard, as you just mentioned. Let me back up a bit for those who perhaps aren't as familiar with this issue. What did the sweetened beverage tax do? And now that it's been repealed, when is the repeal effective?
Sure. So what happened was last November 2016, President Preckwinkle, the Cook County Board President, had cast the deciding vote to pass a tax on sweetened beverages. And those included any beverages that were sold in Cook County that essentially were pre-prepared. And those included fountain drinks or something coming out of a sweet tea dispenser. It exempted anything that was made, for example, at a restaurant, a handmade type thing. At a coffee shop, it was exempted. But it included all drinks that were sweetened, and it included diet drinks that were sweetened at the time. And so that came into effect and was supposed to come into effect July 1. Our organization sued the county, wound up getting a temporary restraining order for 30 days. So the tax took effect, I believe, August 2nd, right around that time. And so that's what it applied to. And now that it's been repealed, it will be effective. The tax will go off at midnight on December 1st. So beginning December 1st, the sweetened beverage tax will no longer apply in Cook County.
And as I often say, the Illinois Channel, we try to cover the process so people can understand how government works. And some of the players, it's not just the senators and the House members. There's roles for associations such as IRMA. And in this case, I think maybe people can appreciate what is it that lobbying often has a bad name, as if you're always trying to corrupt people. But really, in your estimation, what is the role of a lobbyist? In this case, you're a lobbyist, and you were applying your lobbying skills in collaboration with others. What is the role of the lobbyist in using this as an object lesson?
Yeah, I think our role is to pass along information. And certainly, I can only speak for IRMA, but our goal is always to try to pass along the most accurate information we can possibly provide in the most timely manner we can possibly provide it. It does us no good, it does our reputation no good, it does the elected officials no good and their staff no good if we don't pass along accurate and timely information. So really that's our goal. Look, somebody gets elected to something and they might be an attorney, and they might be an attorney specializing in workers' comp. They know an awful lot about workers' compensation. They know nothing about sales tax or other regulations that apply to businesses. That's where our job comes in, and that's where the job of someone who's on the other side comes in. And then the elected official makes the decision based on that information. So I think the information is essential, that we provide is essential to really good decision making.
Can we back up a bit? As you said, the tax had passed in November of last year. Did it catch you and others off guard that it passed, and then you had to start your battle to stop it, or did government reach out? I guess part of the question would be, do we blame the Cook County commissioners for maybe not having asked IRMA and the manufacturers and other interest groups to say, before we vote for this, what are your thoughts? What would it do to your membership? And maybe they failed to do their obligation.
No, I think they did their obligation. I think you have to know Cook County, right? And there's typically it's okay to tax approach to what they do there. And I don't think I'm being too harsh in saying that. Their first reflex tends to be, we'll fill a gap with revenue. But I think we need to be really fair here. There were 8 commissioners from day one who were opposed to this. And remember, President Preckwinkle cast the tie-breaking vote. That by itself almost never happens in Cook County. It forced her to own her proposal, number one. But I think it was clear that we were involved. Our opinions were solicited, as were others. And so it was not a case of being shut out or their failure to do their due diligence. I think they did it. I think those who voted for it initially just didn't anticipate the consumer outrage and, frankly, the effect it would have on businesses. When you have businesses reporting that the categories are the lost sales in that category, which is a very broad category, are 30 to 50%, and you're seeing those same increases across the border where it's not taxed, they take notice.
It's a good example, just because you pass a tax, and on paper, the way this works is you say, well, if we increase the tax, and I'll make up a number, by 10%, then we can see how many sales there were last year, and we'll get 10% more. It doesn't really work that way in the real world, because, as you just said, there is a dynamic response to that tax. So they may have been saying that, in fact, they were going to lose money because they raised this tax, because people just weren't going to go along with it. They were fleeing Cook County. They just wouldn't buy the soda. Maybe they're asking a water out of protest. Right?
Yeah, and I think that was clearly what the commissioners were seeing. There was no way they were going to make their revenue estimate, because consumers weren't just not buying these sweetened beverages. They were not buying groceries in Cook County. So we had a grocer testify Tuesday before the Cook County Board, expressing their experience, and their average cart size is $158. That's their average cart size. And remember, in Cook County, some of those are taxed high and low, so 10.25%. Their business was down 39% on their Cook County side, but was up 38% on the non-Cook County side. So Cook County wasn't just losing the taxes on the sweetened beverages, they were losing the taxes on the entire cart. So they were not only impacting their revenue estimates for the sweetened beverage tax, they were losing on sales tax as well. It was a double whammy that they can ill afford.
And that's a good lesson I think that people ought to take in. When they have these proposals, anytime we hear a tax, they'll say it's going to raise so much money. In this case, I believe it was $200 million was projected. But tain't necessarily so, because people can change their behavior, and that's been seen throughout history that they will do that. Before we close out, and not to catch you off guard, if you may or may not have had a chance, but as we tape this, the day before the president proposed his tax plan, a lot of different changes, some of it applying to bringing down the corporate tax rate to 20%. I just didn't know if you had a chance to even focus on it. I know you've been busy with the beverage tax.
Yeah, between the beverage tax and some other issues we've had going on in Chicago City Council and getting ready for veto session in Springfield, I frankly will confess I don't know all the details of what the president has proposed.
Then lastly, as we stand here, and you probably always have some other issues, what's on the plate for Irma right now? What would you like to have changes made that could help improve the business climate here in Illinois?
Well, I think one of the important things is we've had a couple of bills introduced here in Springfield in reaction to the sweetened beverage tax, and it really is allowed because of a loophole in the state law. And I think they need to follow up and change that, close that loophole, so that Cook County can't come back, or another jurisdiction can't come back and tax sweetened beverages or products that contain salt or whatever it is they want. We should have general sales taxes, but not ingredient by ingredient taxes. I think that that will help consumers have a lot more faith in their government if Springfield takes that next step.
All right. Well, Rob Carver, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.